Hello. If you're watching this recording back, welcome to the Indie Game Clinic. I am Dr. Joe, and this is the monthly Discord community playtest stream, which probably needs a catchier title with less words in it, but you know, we'll work with what we've got at the moment. It does what it says. I'm going to give people a little time to filter in and then say hi to people and then get working through the list of games we've got that I will show you in a second. I'm just making sure I've got everything open my end that I need to have open. Oh look, I've gone live, it says. Isn't that nice? Okay, so the purpose of this stream really is to sort of give a little bonus to people who are in my Discord community. And over the last year, we've grown that community to 100 members, and about half of those are people whose games I've reviewed, and the rest are patrons and people that have got YouTube memberships and stuff, which I am super grateful for. It is really helpful. It's allowing me to focus more on this and spend more time putting out free stuff on YouTube. I know some people feel like it's not free. I did have someone moaning at me for having ads on my YouTube the other day, which is wild. It's just like, I don't know, man. Use an ad blocker, get YouTube Premium. Lots of ways of not having ads on your YouTube. Not really a weird or out of the usual thing for my YouTube to have ads on it. Hi, watching while on the car for now. Hey, Leo, I've got one of your games. I think I might actually. I've got a list, an order that I was going to do them in today, but I think if you're here, then we're going to go with yours first. So, yeah, the purpose of this stream is so that people who are in the Discord community get a sort of priority playtest from me once a month. We haven't really got to a point yet where it's too much for me to do. So that's good, right? Maybe one day we'll get that way, but that will be kind of luxury problems and we can deal with that when we get there. But at the moment, yeah, once a month, kind of just playing through people's games, because the people who are in the Indies Under the Knife series that I do videos of often have to wait months and months because I can just only do so much. And this is like a perk of being in our Discord. So I'm going to try and get Escape from Moo working first, and then we'll go from there. And it would help if I opened the game instead of the Unity Crash handler. Don't think that's what we need to be playing right now. Right. Hey Tony, hey IC and Darius. Good to see you. Escape from Mew is making me get lots of security messages, but I will get it working in a sec. Hope everyone has had a productive week so far. I am working on two projects at the moment that I'm being paid for. One is a sort of gamified learning app where I can't really talk about what it's about, but it's a sort of mobile app that's a game that is learning about a particular scientific topic, which has been interesting. It's the first thing like that I've done, really. And then gearing up to help a team with the visual novel that they're working on and helping them sort of design the interactive side of that. Right, I'm getting Windows security scans. How do I bypass that? It's not the usual pop-up you get. Ah, nice. Okay, it says the scan should take 10 seconds. I've never seen that Windows security pop up down at the bottom right like that. It usually gives me a thing in the middle whenever I download or install something, so I don't know what's going on there. Should have installed this earlier, really. Here we go. Right, game is loaded up 5 times. That's great. Like when you're waiting for a bus, you get 5 buses come along at once. So I'm going to try and shut some of these down. Right, let me just make sure my video is working. So we want escape on the capture. Wee-hee. And on the main screen as well. And I'll occasionally switch back so that people can see the chat. I like having the recording of the chat on the VOD so people can see what I'm responding to. Nearly ready to go, and then we should be able to get the audio going as well. There we go. So I'm so slow. I haven't done one of these in a little while. I've been using OBS a lot for recording, but streaming is still like a bit like flying a spaceship. Please use the in-game feedback form to share your good and bad experiences while playing. We are evaluating changes for a full version on Steam, given there is enough interest. Okay, let me escape from you. Bug feedback form baked into the game seems like a good idea. So yeah, this is looking very sort of high-end in terms of all the textures and everything. One of the things that always worries me about that is it sort of puts everyone's expectation up for every other aspect. Because if you have like really realistic looking textures and then the sound effects feel very arcadey or whatever, it clashes then. But we're going to get some sort of kind of escape room video game type stuff here, I think. Just going to get the chat up on my phone. Frederick, good to hear that you've found someone for the jam. That's really good to hear. People are managing to find folks. Maurice has been on a bug squashing crusade. Footsteps feel nice. Lots of nice stuff here already, actually. I'm just going to jump down this hole. Where are we going? Are we going around here? So that's a way back if you fall down. Classic don't fall down the thing type puzzle. Unreasonable body standards for aliens. What are these? Right, there's a scarab in there. And we've got an interesting mix of Egyptian and alien stuff. Because we all know who built the pyramids, really. It wasn't this skeleton. Okay, so I got the... Can I bother him? Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Can I have your jewellery that you left here? Seems fine. Ah! Ah! That is delightful. I really love that. I mean, you went all out there. That could have just been a click in and the key does the thing, right? But it was a lot of extra stuff going on there. Which I really like from a sort of believability of the world point of view, because a lot of the time it's like, oh, you stick a thing in a wall and a thing opens, and the game world is if the game world is kind of realistic looking, then it's like, why does that happen? Because like there should be some mechanism, but that made that feel really magical, right? Yeah, really, really nice. The sound might be a bit low on the screen on the stream because I've got. Let me turn the master off because I've got like a auto ducking on when I speak, so there might be some sound effects getting clipped out when I speak over them. Okay, we've got a Mercedes block. We've got some stuff that's potentially color-coded. The green is always on the right. And that is the same color. So maybe that's relevant. And I feel like I'm going to have to change some of these switches and see which ones don't make me die in a pit. And I'd rather not die every time, so if we've got a puzzle design where you just have to die to find out whether you got it right or not. But maybe I can... Is there a way I can sort of stand on the other platform when I do each one? Because that's what I would do, right? That's just what I was saying. That's kind of the problem with making something that looks very realistic, because then people expect to be able to behave in certain ways. I hate it when that happens. I hate it when I fall in spikes and die. That's delicious. I think that's a really good example of how to make something feel gruesome without it actually being like censorable, right? Maybe in China, right? But whoa, I'm a bug. Do I go back into here? Is that the idea? And I come back. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of this, the Rebirth, one of the more recent Amnesia games, has this kind of stuff in it, where there's some sort of, like, narrative framing of why you come back when you die. That's an excellent ragdoll. Yeah, I've played some games without full bodies, and I think they work when the things in your hand are the focal point, right? Oh, goodness. Look at that. I like to think that the neck is actually between those planks, and I've somehow just been really unfortunate and slipped and sort of stuck my neck. You know what? The skeleton staying there in a sort of Super Meat Boy replay kind of way is very, very fun. I always loved that mechanic in Super Meat Boy where you see all your previous attempts after when you win, and it's sort of got a really nice payoff. Okay, that's not the only room that's open, so I should check out the other room, because I'm too much of a dumbass for that puzzle. Oh no, this is where I came from, okay. Yeah, one of the things that can really help with designing for navigation, particularly in like 3D or first-person games a lot, is if you have a lot of symmetrical places. I mean, this isn't totally symmetrical, right? But it's quite symmetrical. If you have a lot of symmetrical places, then try and give, like, one side of it a particular character. Like, oh, this is a symmetrical room, but this side has all of the plants growing on it or whatever. And then it makes it a lot easier for people to memorize which way is which in relation to each other. Okay. So there's some sort of mechanism behind there. I can't interact directly with this. I feel like there is a relevance of the colour being repeated between the two elements, but all of these just seem to kill me with a trapdoor, so I was sort of thinking maybe the three-sided thing is the clue, and it's telling me 3 greens or something like that, but I've tried several of them, on the green handle, and that hasn't done anything good for me yet, so... Do you have any advice, Skeleton? Or am I going to have to ask the chat? I've got a bone to pick with you. I don't seem to be able to pick these up. They're very, very physicsy and lovely. But the fact that I can push them around makes me think I should be able to do other stuff with them. And at the moment, I can't. But I'm going to try. Like, what if I can't die because I fill the pit with logs? It's time for logs. Whoa. I'm very strong. I think getting reincarnated twice has made me really strong. Like, I don't know. Have anyone seen Twin Peaks? Nadine, when she has a little accident and she comes back super strong? Look, I can just boot that log up in the air. In monitors and streaming news, I still haven't found a second monitor because going on Facebook Marketplace involves... Ooh, okay, so the brown one loosens a mechanism over there. Is that the same for all of them? No. Okay. Interesting. So there is some sort of sequence. At the moment, it feels like sequence guessing, but there may be a clue somewhere that is like a visual clue that I just haven't noticed. Hello. I thought I would visit you in my bug form. It's been a while since we hung out. I've born and died 3 times since then, I think. I admired you so much that I wanted to become a skeleton too. Hang on. This is the good thing about doing streams versus proper videos, is I can just act like the most demented QA tester that you've ever seen. Whee! Right, so we've loosened that one. I'm not totally sure if I'm supposed to, if there is anything that's supposed to tell me beforehand, or if it is just trial and error. Because sort of trial and error death puzzles feels sort of almost not like a puzzle. So this one killed me when I pressed brown on it. So I'm just going to do that again, because I just love making skeletons so much. Try it, yeah. Ah, Power of Sin has some sneaky... Oh, you're so sneaky. Ah, if only we had human hands. I think this should be what you see on the Steam page for this game. Just like this. Just sort of alien gooch. With a little bug in it. That's the dream, you know. Video games... I hate video games because they just cater to the male fantasy. And then it's this. We've got... I think... Okay, so this is going to... Once we get here, it's going to open up the next thing. But I do wonder if we can find out some information while we're back here. If we didn't... Maybe that is part of the dynamic of the game. There's a little door up there. The ability that you have in this game to sort of sneak behind the game is already kind of giving me Portal vibes. Right, so this one has an open thing on the right. And this one is on the outside of the wall, and that was on the inside of the wall. I'm going to see if that means anything. So if that first one is anything to go by, then these two, it's going to be the inside ones. That one on the left and that one on the right. And with this one, it should be the one on the right, which is the green one, which I think I've been killed by before, but I will just leave that one for now on. I'm finding this puzzle very hard, but it also feels like there are enough things in the environment for me to look at and try and ascertain whether they're clues or not, which is very good for a puzzle game to have, right? Died again. So there could be something to do with the order in which you do them. Let's have a look at the mechanism again. Right, these all have a rope that is tied here. You know what? I really love the ability to see. We get so many dungeons in games where, you know, as I said earlier, there's just some hidden machinery you never see. And having the ability to look around in the game and see how all of these Indiana Jones type traps work and stuff is really cool. I like it a lot. Okay, so here I did one of these handles and it loosened that block by pushing that out. But I can't see any other clues as to why one of these things does the pushing and not the other. Is there some other tell? So that's the thing that looses the... that's the thing that looses the trapdoor. Can I see it from the other side? Interesting. Okay. The clue is on the back. Yeah. Yeah, the central idea of this, of like the game being about exposing the mechanisms of these kind of traps and puzzles, are such a standard of like multiple types of games and settings, and seeing them sort of exposed like this and turning that into the game is really cool. I love it. Because you go into it thinking it's going to be a standard escape room, and that's not really what this is doing. It's doing something totally new. It's much more of a lateral thinking puzzle like we got with Portal and all of the games that came after it that were doing similar things. Yeah, anyone see any clues as to... is it... Okay, this is the clue. This, where this pushing mechanism meets this, right? So on this one it was this side where the gap was. On this one it should be, so it's from that other side it goes done, then okay, we don't want the pushing mechanism, do we? We want the... Yeah, we want the one that doesn't push, that has a gap. So it would be right here. Hard to turn it round in your head. Very, very difficult puzzle. And then left, and then right. Right, left, right when you're facing the other way, I think. It's a very smart mechanic, yeah, I think. Very cool idea. Right. Left. And solving these sorts of things just gets more satisfying the longer it's taken for you to do it. But I don't think I would have solved that without you guys. But I also... No, I probably would have eventually. And there's enough stuff in here, like these symbols on the walls, where you kind of look at anything. Oh, is that a clue? Is that a clue for now? Is that a clue for later on? There's enough to keep you looking around and, you know, possible red herrings and false flags as to what the clues are and what aren't. It's really cool. There we go. Why are you looking at me like that? And we've got a little place here to rest. You know, if you want to just chill out on the slope. Crack open a few cold ones with the boys on the old slope. Thanks, Dylan, for the recording of the... Yeah, my short-term memory for that kind of stuff. I'm definitely the sort of person that needs to write things down on paper when I play this kind of game, because my short-term memory is bad for lots of reasons. Okay, we're down a hole. There's some lovely moss. The lovely square that needs a thing in it. Should we go all the way back to Mr. Skeleton and ask if he's seen a wooden square? Okay, walk back round here and then go the other way. Have I been here? Ah, ladder. I like a visual thing here that some of you more sort of art-inclined people will have noticed. What's it called? Is it called chromatic shading? There's a name for this, right? Where instead of having like a white light and black shadows, you have a coloured light, like this light is slightly yellow. And then the shadows, instead of being pure black, they sort of shade things in a complementary colour. And that means that you can make shadows look dark without actually darkening them, and that's how lots of cartoons do their shading. Like if you look at something like The Simpsons, when they do a shaded scene, the shadows aren't actually done in black, they're done in like a complementary color to the color of the light, and it's really effective, and it's quite a good way of getting this moody lighting in a game without hurting the visibility too much. So I'm going to go down here and over. Ah, you're up there. I think this is as close as we're going to get to a functioning toilet in this place. Yeah, thank you to everyone so far who is giving feedback to the dev. It's always really nice and helpful to do. Particularly cool when they're here, so thank you for being able to join us. When people signed up, I gave 2 possible times for the stream, and I think I just ended up choosing the most popular one. Because we have community members all over the world. And that means I cannot make everyone happy. Oh, I hurt my little leggy weggies. Right, so if I go back down here and I go along here, then I should have been able to look up and see that before anyway, but I didn't, because looking up is hard. Yeah, we've got I think sorry, I just need to find the way up again now, because I obviously didn't need to come back down here. I've been a foolish, foolish man. Here we go. So I do remember, I don't know how many of you watch Chris Zukowski's stuff on games marketing, but he has said a few times about, like, one of the reasons why puzzle games don't make for good streaming games is that there are lots of streamers who just don't like being dumb with an audience. Like getting stuck. But I quite like the sort of thing that we've got going on here with kind of trying to solve some of it together. So okay, so we had an initial puzzle that felt like it was like the core concept of the game, of this kind of exposed mechanisms of a trap and working out how it works, and using the two forms you have to do that. And then this feels much more of a just sort of like explore the environment and find the thing type thing, which is fine. I could see that would be a good way to break up this type of game, because if I went from the first puzzle to a puzzle that was immediately like the same sort of thing but more difficult, I think my brain would have immediately melted. And having this kind of maze-like just find the thing you need, it's provided a nice gap. But I do want to get back to the meat of the thing now, which is our exposed mechanism puzzles. Right, we've got a lovely yeah, it is a little bit too dark in certain places. Like the blue shading is nice, but it could be maybe a little bit brighter in places. And we don't have light sources in the environment. And I think, again, it's one of those things where the more kind of realistic certain parts of your game are, like all the textures and stuff, the more you sort of build up this debt from the realism of sort of expectation of everything else to match up with that. And I think the lack of light sources feels a bit strange because of that. It's not a cartoonish environment. It's a very sort of high-end looking glossy environment, and that makes the magical ambient light feel very strange. Okay, I'm going to just start walking across and see what happens. And now I guess to be fair, I probably could have seen this one without going bug mode, right? Because I could have just walked down here as a regular human girl. But now we can see the support. So that has a support at one end, so that means it pivots on it and goes down. The corners on either side are fine. Going on the left-hand side across. So you basically need to go across these three little ones, cross, and then across those two. Oh no, and then across three. So it's kind of an S shape going across, like three across, and then across the middle, and then go do the remainder. Yeah, a lot less daunting now that we understand that the general principle of the game is exposing the sort of exposing the mechanisms and looking at them from the right angle. Yeah. That one looked safe. Okay, so I died on this end and it was... Oh yeah, that's got a pivot on it. Okay, so we need to go two along here and then miss that end corner, go across and into the middle, right? Oh, there was a TV show. Remy, you'll remember this if you're still there. There was a TV show here in the 90s called The Crystal Maze, where people got locked in a room and had to do a puzzle. And it was hosted by what's his face, Richard O'Brien from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And there we go. And the whole aesthetic of this is kind of like that. It was quite a high-end show, right? Everything looked good, but because it was UK Channel 4 and it was shot with certain types of cameras and everything, it kind of had a adventure mini golf kind of feel to it, and I think this has that as well. And I don't necessarily mean that in a negative way, because it makes it feel playful. You don't want something like this to feel too serious, I don't think, because it is, you know, going through a series of puzzles is always going to feel a bit contrived anyway. So keeping a little bit of kind of playful goofiness in your world is not a bad thing if it's a sort of world that needs it, you know? The music choices in this are really good as well. It's sort of like you get little bits of drumming, but it never really kicks in fully. And again, that's good for a puzzle game because you don't want to be overwhelmed. Okay, I think here we're just looking at rotating the bridge. Right, I'm going to do maybe one more puzzle room after this and then move on to the next game, because I need to give all the games enough time, and also I don't want to solve too much of this on stream because millions of people will watch it and then they'll have the game spoiled for them. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely giving Crystal Maze kind of vibes. Look at that. What's going on there? Can't reach it because you need to turn the thing around again. Okay, interesting. Okay, but that's a different bridge. Right, so this bridge turns around so you can access that tool on the wall there. But I'm guessing when this bridge is turned around, is it going to block the ladder? Or is the ladder going to be next to it? This is truly the Dark Souls of bridge manipulation games. You can put that on the Steam page as a quote. The Dark Souls of bridge manipulation games. Okay, so that allows us to get through here. That is that back the way we came? That looks like back the way we came. Ah, and then from here we need to turn this round and... Right, okay. So I think we're resetting the original bridge in order to get out a different way that wasn't open before. And again, I think just having a couple of different decorations and stuff in your palette so that when you have two similar areas, you can make one of them look a little bit more different from the other one is going to help stop this game being frustrating in the wrong ways. Because, I mean, you want a degree of people having to remember where things are and so on, but you don't want it to be like something that inhibits people too much. Right, so that bridge is now facing the right way for me there, but in order to get onto it I need to reset the other bridge. Okay, so they both need to go back where they were after that little thing's been opened. Frederick, what is what kind of spam message is it? Is it telling you that you're spamming, or is it? Yeah, it's the spatial orientation thing. I think this is a really general level design thing actually. And I used to I'll just put this full screen and then we'll switch game in a second. I used to, one of the studios I used to work in, I used to really struggle to work with one of our environmental designers, and this was on Roblox games. And it was because they would base a lot of the things they built on real places, like real buildings and stuff like this, and they always ended up making these sort of symmetrical spaces, because a lot of buildings in the real world are, right? Like, you go and look at a government building or a tower block or whatever, they are asymmetrical. They're symmetrical, not asymmetrical, and that people are fine with navigating that in the real world, but in games you're sort of navigating with an artificial body, and there isn't as much detail to help you distinguish that, okay, when I walk in the building, that is on the right, that is on the left, and da-da-da-da. And the more kind of abstract a video game space is, then the more confusing symmetry can be for navigation. So one of the things that that you have to do is take that symmetrical space, or that space with similar looking areas, and just give them a slightly different flavor to each other. It doesn't have to be something drastic. It could be like slightly changing the color of the stone, or putting some patterning on one place that's not in the other, but that can help people to navigate. And it's one of the reasons why like post-apocalyptic settings work so well, because you can take all of these modern buildings that are normally symmetrical, and then the process of smashing them and putting holes through the floor and stuff makes them asymmetrical and kind of solves this problem for you. Yeah, really like that. That is a really cool concept, the way that the puzzles in that game are handled, and the way that you have to sort of look at the backs of mechanisms. I think it's really, really cool. Yeah, I think Frederick might be right. I think having those, it sort of depends what you're going for, but rotating those things, I think it currently snaps at 30 degrees, Frederick. So I sort of pushed it 3 times to get it to go 90 degrees. But it sort of depends what kind of vibe you're going with and how sort of simulationist the game is. If we were going for like a full kind of simulationist feel, then like being able to pick up planks and put them where you want and stuff might be another part of that. But it feels a little bit more sort of cartoony, and yeah, having things click at certain degrees might be better there. Auto modded thing with a link, right? I'm not getting it show up in my restream, which is interesting. Let me just see if I can see it here. Yeah, I can't see it in the YouTube chat. Hey, Baz. Right, seeing as Baz is here, let's get Baz's game open. I'm quite excited to play this one because I seem to have done quite a lot with it since last time, and I think, you know, I got quite stuck with it before. It's a difficult idea to execute. So if people didn't see Baz's game before, it's you're building a train, which is like a big sort of, you know, it's got kind of got like a diesel punk anime kind of feel to it, I guess. There we go. New game. Protect the head of the train. It's the only vulnerable part. The rest of the train is your sword and shield. And the reason for this is because the train is basically like playing the game Snake, right? Right, I'm going to play this in a window so I can keep the chat open on my screen, I think, because it works fine in a window. You are about to play Snake. You can only turn, not start or stop. Avoid massive obstacles like mountain, woods, water, and most of all yourself. Okay? Just keep her running, don't look back. Those things tore through the city like it was paper. We're lucky we made it out. I got to check who climbed aboard in the rush. Could be folks hurt, could be worse. Just keep us moving. We stop, we're dead. Nice sense of stakes, right, in the world of this game. And done in 2 clicks. It's often all it needs to be in a... You know, when you're providing narrative for an action game, you do not need to write War and Peace. You just need to give people some context, let them know why they should care about what they're doing. What does that do? Okay, so we have transferring between environments on this, right? Cool. I think the stringed instrument in the soundtrack is slightly overpowering, but you might be able to just clip out some of the high-end frequencies on it if you put it in an EQ in Audacity and just take like the second or third EQ thing in from the right and bring that down a little bit. It will just take some of the harshness off of that instrument. You got gas, you got pressure, you got hands to work. We ain't just running, we're fighting. Okay. So we've had one little area to just introduce the movement and that you're playing Snake, and now we're going to get ready to fight back against the thing. There's something about this smoke effect that still feels a bit odd. It's because I think it's the outlines on it make it look like a very solid object, because like kind of visual rule in the rest of the world is that like an outline is the edge of an object, but smoke isn't really a solid object. So we're spending resources to put weapons on our snake, basically. And I'm guessing, generally speaking, I'm going to want to keep the enemies at my back rather than closer to my head. So I'm going to put my guns at as far back as I can. Oh, I can't because I've only got... haven't got enough resources. Okay, continue to combat phase. This feels a little bit hidden. When you've got a next button, I would generally put it in the bottom right because that's where people are so used to seeing it, I think. But yeah, this is already starting to feel a bit more like there's a choice here, because the first time I played it, it was like, okay, you can build guns on the train, but there wasn't really a sense of why you would want to build one in a particular position. And I don't know if it's just because I've played it before, but at least that I feel like I'm thinking about that a bit more this time.
Some enemies will have the ability to attack from a distance. Try to avoid their shots.
Yeah, I think there's a lot here that could be done with the UI. I think, oh, I went through the trees. That was silly. Right. I do like the idea that all of the enemies are giant bugs. We're going to these arrows again to get out of the level. Is that what happens? Yeah, cool. Yeah. So yeah, this is a bit of a classic problem that serif fonts make a game a little bit harder to make text hard to read quickly. These buttons, it's very kind of low contrast, I guess. We're going to put a lightning cannon there and another regular cannon. And now I really do have the guns sort of weighted towards the back of the train, so I'm going to, I guess, try and go near the enemies, but not actually with the head of the train. Okay, yeah, on a phone it is going to be tiny. But I think this game has come along leaps and bounds since it doesn't look very different physically, right? The interface and what you're seeing happen doesn't look very different from the last time I played this on stream a month ago. But in terms of the actual gameplay that happens in my head, where I'm making decisions and stuff, it is absolutely miles ahead. I think a lot of the stuff that you read in this game just needs to be a bit higher contrast as well. Another thing that can help is if you put a shadow, whenever there's stuff on the page that you want players to read, if you put like a shadow or a blur behind here, then it immediately makes this look higher contrast, so it's easier to pay attention to it. I think the way that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff missing in terms of like having sounds when you click on interface and stuff like that, and it currently, even though we're moving from one environment to another, it feels like one long level because you immediately go into the next thing and then there's more dialogue. There isn't a sort of sense of wind down of like the music dips, the screen goes down and then there's a next thing, which can help make you feel like you're progressing through discrete levels. But I do really like the way that this is structured generally, of like a tutorial that is gradually introducing the story, gradually introducing elements. It seems very well done so far. Right, so I can start converting the lower deck to broadsides now. Is that like sort of like boat cannons? Yeah, so this is really interesting because the dynamic of that this game is producing, right? I think one of the questions I had the first time I played it a month ago was that, like, how does the tower defense, building of the towers, and the snake really go together? And one of the things that putting these things together is producing is, you know, I just had that moment a moment ago where I was like, oh, I need to put my guns at the back of my train because I need to keep the head of my train away from danger. So it's better to have your firepower at the back. But because it's Snake, the train is constantly growing, and that means that if you put your best guns at the back, they're gonna go out of date soon because they're gonna be closer to the front of the train. So that's an interesting dynamic. I'd like to see it play out a little bit more, but it's an interesting push and pull. Which any game that sort of aims to be a strategy game in the long run needs to have that kind of something that you can't quite balance as a player, something that you will never perfect, right? That just is a moving target. I'm going to try and kill the worm this time because I think I ran away from it before. The way the worm turns into slices of salami when it animates to go under the ground looks very strange. Salami worm. Right, actually killed some stuff this time. Yeah, I think someone said in the chat a moment ago that it's not super clear when the enemies are being hurt, and I think that's something that could be like a good thing to focus on next, because the game loop is a lot stronger than the last time I played this. The sense that the way I move during the combat matters feels a lot stronger. The sense that where I put my upgrades matters, that also feels a lot stronger now. And I think now a bit more attention to game feel, like making the smoke look different from the rest of the game, making it a bit clearer when enemies are getting hurt, you know, sort of making them respond to bullets and making them shake around, and that kind of stuff would be a good thing to focus on next. Because but the game loop is definitely feeling a lot more solid than it did previously. Can we continue? Okay, you can add a special wagon to the train. When you choose, the wagon will be added to the end of the train. Hello, Francis. Are you going to give me a holy... So I've got sort of like sexy 1920s witch lady or sort of twinky priest boy. I can't pick between those. She's a witch and he's a priest, I guess. And this is going to determine what building I get. Yeah, I think Mike's right that the kind of the way that the worm is rendered at the moment, it's fine for a demo, but I don't think... I think the flat shading and sectioning of things doesn't really make good use of the fact that they're bugs, right? Because you want them to feel kind of maybe a little bit gross. I don't know. I'm gonna have the witch. That's a cool idea, having a little sort of choose your own adventure where it changes what you get. Nice idea. So is that the sanctum that I just got added? Boilder. I don't know what that is. We're just gonna, right, last level or two, and I'm gonna just put a big fiery tail on this train and see what happens. Probably get something fire resistant, but hey. Having everything at the same flat cost is maybe... I don't know, it makes it hard to feel like they are different from each other. Some missions involve capturing objectives. The head of the train needs to be near the objective to capture it. What? Where is the forest? How is this possible? Oh, Gabrielle. Why so incredulous, Gabrielle? Here we go. Yeah, I think the art style of this game is something that could be reviewed later on, but I do think that when you've got sort of like big machinery as kind of one side, and then the other side is the is like a natural thing like bugs, that's an interesting opposition, right? But it's not really played out here in the visual design because the bugs kind of look a bit plasticky and stuff because of the cell shading, right? Whereas if you've got a sort of geometric, big, clunky iron machine and then your bugs are gross, you know, they're like Terminids from Helldivers or something like that. They're slimy, they are repulsive, that kind of thing. It's quite hard to do that when you've got a cell-shaded aesthetic where everything looks a little bit plastic and toy-like. Is that the objective? I need to go near that? Ah, I bumped into it. Yeah, that one's coming along really well. I'm super impressed with like the work you've done on that in the last month, Baz. Like I think if someone watched the two videos, they wouldn't necessarily be able to like visually tell the difference between those two things and understand like how different it feels to play. But having played the previous version, like the decision making in that just felt like miles ahead of where we were last month or whenever I played it before. I think it was last month. So we've looked at land trains and we've looked at Escape from Mu. Are any of the other... Gamma said that one of the Fallout devs did a video on designing the cockroaches. Is that new Fallout or is that original? Is that like a Tim Kaine video or is it something else? That sounds fun. Yeah, felt way better. So I just want to check if any of the devs of the other 3 games are in the chat, because I will go to your game first if that's the case. So we've seen Aloya, if that's how you say it, and we've seen Baz's game. I can't see any other similar names across here. So we will go for Mesa next then, I think, because that's at the top of the list. And let me just check where that is. Right. I think I have Mesa on the old Steam. Oh no, it's one that's in it's one that's browser based. Let me just get that for us. I do try and do some sort of prep on this to get things ready, but when you've got games on multiple different platforms and like one is on Steam and one is a downloadable on itch and one is a run in HTML5 on itch and stuff, it gets a bit cray, as they say. Right, run the game. Can I full screen it or we're going to just stretch it from there? Hey Maurice, we're going to play Maurice's game and Maurice is here. The Discord, Jofo, is currently not public, to be honest, partly just so that I can fund this channel, because it's never going to be like a super popular channel where I am able to make loads of money off AdSense, because I'm not a super happy kids TV presenter doing noob games content. So, you know, I'm never going to be able to fund doing this full time just off of AdSense. So one of the reasons why the Discord is not freely open is because I am very dependent on people's donations to be able to make this channel and do this stuff. And it's also just to keep it small, because I've managed Discords with like 400 or 500 people in before, and I'd rather not. Hey Sam, good to see we've got the Stellar Rogues dev here as well, so we'll check that after. Yeah, if you want to play along, let me just drop the link in the chat. I could never remember photosensitivity. Yeah, any sort of full sentences in all caps, generally that's a bad UX thing because it makes it harder to read, but I think people are used to it in a lot of cases. Zoom it in a little bit so we can see properly people on their phones. Is this cutting off? Have I zoomed in too far? It looks like it's cutting off the edge of the screen. Sorry. Okay. Oh, it's because I was using the arrow keys and that was just messing around with the... Ah, I see. Okay, so... Maurice, when you posted this on our Discord, I couldn't really see what the game was because it was like, oh, it's kind of like Pac-Man. And you have to try and go down the middle of the lane in order to get both sides of the points. But having seen that you die when you hit the wall, it's like, okay, right, this game makes sense now. It's a game of making split-second judgments and taking risks or deciding not to take risks. I don't know if you can hear from the frequency of the blips, but the game gets faster very quickly. Yeah, I'm not going to be good at this, but I already have quite like good feelings about it. I can see this being very appealing for very sort of challenge rage game based streamers to play. I think the aesthetic is already fantastic. I wouldn't change the visual style of this at all. Those effects when you hit stuff, amazing. I hit that on purpose to get the effect, obviously. But music selection, really interesting. Feels very varied, but also feels like it all goes together. We've got a slow-mo. This is great. Even the like color palette for where you've got the colored elements is interesting. You've thought it through. You know, it's not just every single color in the spectrum, and that makes it feel like a deliberate choice. It feels very designed, like it's very stylish. I said when I saw it on the Discord, I said this looks like a game you would get in like a nightclub in Berlin, but the colors actually have sort of almost like a sort of Scandinavian minimalist feel, like something you would find in IKEA, but as a game. I don't know if you played the game Rimmed Capsule. I think that was made by a Swedish guy. It's just kind of got that same aesthetic. There's the choice of colors and the minimalism. Right, I'm going to try and focus for a little bit and see how far I can get, but I think people can kind of see what this is and what's interesting or good about it already. Ah. You sort of overcorrect and you try and like nip yourself back and get something, and then it's not worth it most times. Terrible, terrible. And I'm so bad at this. My reactions are not great. I don't know if making it a little bit bigger is gonna impact me in any positive way. Are there still sort of the equivalent of like Flash game portals where you put your game on a site and you get paid for like ads? Because this feels like, I mean, this could be a premium game as well, but it does kind of feel like it would do really well as a web portal game. I kind of always think about games in those terms because I used to work in a school and kind of just see what Flash games people played in their break times and stuff, and this feels like it would fit that very, very well. This is what a Roomba sees. It doesn't control bad at all. I'm not very good at this. I'm not very good at Twitch-based games. So every time I crash in this game, every time I would say a very positive thing about this game, and what you want in any kind of action-based game is, when I fail in this game, I don't feel like the game is being unfair to me. I feel like it is because I did something wrong, right? Not everyone will feel that way. Some people will feel like the game is cheating, but oh, yeah, just the amount of time it takes to turn around in a corridor itself is so hard. Frederick, that's a really interesting idea. Yeah, so you only accelerate when you're not picking stuff up. So the amount of time it would take a player to get up to the speed that I was getting to there would take way longer. But the game would sort of punish you for backtracking, because in the version that Frederick's suggesting, it's like hitting the diamonds and picking them up slows you kind of down a little bit. And that means that whenever you're going over a black area that you've been over before because you're backtracking or you haven't planned your route very well, that is when you're accelerating. I think that could be quite interesting, but just a thing to try out if you haven't already. I think that's a really neat suggestion, but it would make the game feel more casual and maybe a bit more zen, because it would feel like when it's speeding up, it's because of something I've done and I've messed up. And whereas at the moment, the speeding up is something I don't have any control over. Yeah, that's a neat game. Feels fantastic. Visual and sort of like the juice of it, the kind of the way things ping and explode and stuff in that is really, really neat. And I think it's a sort of testament to what you can do with minimalism and kind of sticking to like basic shapes and colors and trying to get as much as you can out of them as well. So yeah, let's go Stellar Rogues next, seeing as Sandwich is here. And I think that is another one that I've got a link to on the old... where is it? Can't remember if this was the one I downloaded or not. Here we go. So yeah, I can't share the link for this one because it's passworded and it's not an open build, but let's run it and see how we get on. Unity, Unity. That's the new Unity theme tune. Okay. I guess we're doing a new voyage, unless I've been Manchurian candidated and I don't remember playing this game. me just full screen this so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. Oh, men just want one thing. And it's a map of a star system with a little spaceship on it and things that go round.
Press the next button to start the tutorial. This is your awesome spaceship.
Enemy action shield ×5. Okay.
This is your deck and it shows how many cards you have left in your deck. In this prototype you can't see what cards are in your deck, sorry.
That's fine. That is like a deluxe feature. I never... I play a lot of these games. Play a lot of Slay the Spire, play a lot of Roguebook. I very, very rarely look in my discard pile on my deck. Cards will appear here at the start of each turn. Drop attack cards on this side of the battle to use them. Drop ability and shield cards on this side of the battle. Okay. This is your energy. You play energy to play cards. Equipment cards are placed in these slots. So that's like no, you can turn it off. Okay, so we've got positions for recurring ability cards that are a bit like, you know, having a, what are they called? It's like a gadget in Magic the Gathering. But here you can turn them off, so you get the sort of FTL turning things on and off type thing, which I'm going to sound like a big nerd, but that is kind of my favourite thing in FTL. And I think part of it is because, like, the fiction of Star Trek, right? If you watch Star Trek, even like the original series, the old, there's so much of like engineering talk, and oh, we need to power this down so that we have enough power for this, and I just love that in FTL. This is your cargo hold. Cards stored here are kept between turns. Okay. And maybe, is that just one card slot where I can save stuff? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see how the game works. This is an interesting space cannon. Right, they are going to shield 5 times, so I just need to damage as much as I can. So we do a... Ah! Oh, that's great. That feels really nice. I think you could probably already see some graphic design here, things here we can tighten up, like having this text go all the way up to the borders feels a bit cheap, but you know, this is a prototype, and like the view of the game of like having your deck of cards on the control screen, and then yeah, it's really cool. I like it. End turn. Right, they're going to shield again. Increases all attack card damage by 50. So I put that up there. That's using up some power. And now when I do this damage, I'm going to do 1 × 8. Is that instead? I didn't get through their shield anyway. Or maybe I did. Maybe that's what that is. And they are going to missile this turn. So I do 2 shields. And I'll do a cannon. Yeah, I can finish them before they... So Dutch, I got the dev is in the chat for this one, but I got a link for this one, but it was passworded, so I'm not sure they're doing a fully public demo yet. But yeah, it's great, right? Like, it's got all of the core mechanics of what these games usually have, or at least Slay the Spire and Roguebook are the main ones I've played. But the way it uses the sci-fi theme to kind of present the information differently is really, really nice. And I like that idea of the little bits of equipment that use up power, because, like I said, I'm a nerd for Star Trek engineering and turning things on and off. Shield will be maintained between turns. That sounds helpful. Go for the boring survivability thing. And then I think what that star map is going to need is a clear indication of why you would want to go to one place over another. And maybe it was there and I didn't see it, but let's have a look next time we go there. Because I think a fantastic way to design these kind of challenge maps in roguelikes, if you look at how Hades does it, it's like you choose the next room and you don't know what you're going to face in the next room in terms of a challenge, but you know what reward you're going to get. So you sort of know the stakes of that room. And then the opposite way of doing it is, you know, Slay the Spire, you you don't see what the reward is, but you see what the challenge is. It's like the inverse. And there's always in both of those situations, there's a missing piece of information, right? You either see what sort of thing you're going to get, whether it's an enemy or a boss or whatever, and you don't see the reward, or you just see the reward. And I think there's something in there. There's something about having that kind of limited information, but still enough information to make a choice, right? So when we get back to that menu in a minute, when we get back to that star map, I'm going to be interested to see if there is any way of making the choice about where to go next, or if it is just gambling, right? Because people will want to be able to make a judgment in that, even if it is sort of partial information. And I think the partial information judgment is the interesting kind of judgment in these games. I played a RPG deck builder called Hellcard. I think it was in my deck builders video. So if you're new to the channel, I did do a video a couple of months ago that was like a history of deck builders, but it was kind of silly because throughout the video I had I was showing different deck builders going back to like Dominion and Ascension and stuff, and then talking about video game ones. And throughout the video I had Tabletop Simulator open, and I was making a deck builder using a card from every deck builder that I reviewed. So it had like gold cards from Dominion, and then it had, I can't remember, it had a character from the House Party game in UFO 50, which is a deck builder, and some erotic deck builder I found on Kickstarter had a card in it called like Kiss Their Neck or something like that. So if you like deck builders, I do have a video on them and what I think is good in a deck builder. But this is doing like this has a very good implementation of all of the basic things that I would expect to see, I think. Let's get another attack boost card. I wonder if these stack, if I can have two active at once. Right, yeah, so this map at the moment, it's kind of pretty. It gives us that kind of FTL traveling across a thing kind of vibe. But there's nothing on these to let me know why I would pick one over another, right? And I think thinking about what I just said about like the Hades version versus the Slay the Spire version, they both have merits to them. Is the player going after a reward and then getting surprised by an enemy, or is it the other way around? They sort of can see that the enemy's there, but they don't know what reward they're hiding. There's pros and cons to doing each of those things, I think. So I'll put a shield stabilizer in, even though I don't need to do shield this turn, but that means I can use it later. Put one of them there. And we can put one thing in the cargo hold for next turn. Okay, that makes sense. And that's a good thing to be able to potentially upgrade later on, right? Shield. We need 7 shield. And one of those. Yeah, it better not be Mass Effect music, because I'm gonna get stricken again. Although I don't really care about copyright strikes in streams, because we have such a small community anyway that it doesn't make any difference to me. But yeah, the day I put out a review with copyright music in and it randomly blows up and does like 30,000 views, and then I get a copyright strike, I will cry. And I will find the dev on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever, and I will call them a stinky poo bum. Does anyone remember the Does anyone remember when it was a sci-fi film with Will Smith and his son in, where they're like on an alien planet? Can anyone remember what that was called? And when they did the trailer for it, they just straight up used the music from Deus Ex, from the first Deus Ex Square Enix reboot, what the Mankind Divided. They just used the same music. They were like, oh, it's fine, no one will notice. It's just some sci-fi music, whatever. Punani Boo Boo, says Dylan. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Delta Vine said Starless Abyss is the competition for this. Interesting. So yeah, I mean, as with all of these things, you got to play the competition. You got to play the competition, and you got to see what your game is gonna do differently from it. And you got to make sure that you're offering something different. And if that game is a bigger game made by a team of 10 people, and yours is a little game, you still got to do something different. It might not be something more ambitious. It might just have a different vibe. And I think what was it Fred said about making this first person? Because we don't actually need to see our ship at the moment. So yeah, if you were looking out of the ship and playing the cards to hurt the enemy, because it's kind of, I do really like the interface, but it's like we're watching our ship there, and then we're in a ship, which I guess is maybe supposed to be something else. I do wonder about that suggestion about making it first person, if it would. I mean, it would do a couple of things, right? It would differentiate it from similar games, maybe. Right, we're going to put an attack booster in. I'm not going to win this round. I'm just going to get pummeled, but such is the way when you have a shield and you can only draw so many. Right, cannon time now. And okay. I feel like I should maybe still be able to cargo something at that stage. After the cards are played. That's a really nice little VFX that when the lasers hit. Right. One shield. One of the things I'm finding as well with the interface of this. See, Remy is here with the obscure Will Smith film knowledge. Yeah, it was After Earth. Dutch Daniel, that's a pretty good pretty good way of describing how to do competitor analysis. Yeah, play the other game for 10 hours and then just work out which bits are annoying and don't do them. One of the things I'm noticing as I play is that my shield stands out quite a lot. This is very high contrast, the 4 on the black. My power, I feel like I'm not always as aware of it, and it's something to do with like my cards are over here and I'm playing them, and I'm sort of paying attention to this number, and I feel like if the ship is here and its shield is represented by this blue thing, then there should be more of an association between this shield symbol and this shield here. And like, even if it was just making it light up with the blue around the edge and put a line to it or something, I don't know what the solution is. But at the moment, this shield feels a little bit separate from the shield on the ship. And this energy counter over here is very important to pay attention to, but I feel quite distracted from it, and I'm not sure why that is. There's some sort of visual design improvement that could be made there, but I'm not totally sure what it is. I'll put that big old missile in the cargo hold. But there's loads of really lovely use of metaphor here, like the idea of the cargo hold being where you save a card for the next turn just makes immediate sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense if you think too hard about it, but that's not what I'm concerned with. What I'm concerned with is just legible mechanics that are easy to understand, and that is very easy to understand. It's good. Can I take him out this turn? Oh. Thought the attack booster would have made that higher, but maybe he had some shield. Whenever you take unshielded damage, deal 1 back. I never like these kind of revenge mechanics unless I'm playing a tanky thing with loads of health, because I'd rather just not take damage. Fire every attack card in your hand. Yeah, that's a nice one. We got to go with that. I love all the brainstorming happening in the comments. Right, I'm going to try and focus on the game for a little bit, because very thinky reading game. Lots of text. Right, we repair the ship. We've got 200 credits left. I can't increase the cargo capacity, but that's cool that it's there as a thing we can do. Alien technology for sale, open brackets, illegal, close brackets. my favorite. I wouldn't want any alien technology if it was legal, but the fact that it's illegal is exciting. Upgrade power system, I don't need that. Add equipment slot, don't need that. Let's have a look at what the equipment for sale is. I just want a freaking laser. And I got that Fire Everything card, so it probably is going to benefit me to take as many red attack cards as I can. And yeah, when it comes to trying to polish up the visual design of these cards, I would say look at actual card games, like particularly very high-end card games. So the company I would look at is Fantasy Flight. They've made lots of games using Star Wars IP. The visual design of their games is absolutely beautiful. So remember, you can take inspiration from things that aren't video games. And if your game is a card game, then look at the best card games when it comes to doing things like visually designing your cards. There might be certain aspects of it being a video game where you need to do something differently, but I'm talking just about the style of it, like how the text is rendered, you know, how you do borders, all of that nice stuff, because this is fine as a prototype. I can see very clearly what is an attack and what is another type of ability and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you want this to look really polished, I would look at the graphic design in those sorts of games. Fire everything at once. Is it going to get through that shield? I did 5. Fine, whatever. Let's put a shield stabilizer in place for when we need it.
Great Scott! We need to activate the shield stabilizer.
We've got 8 shield. Okay, I can take a hit. Let's do some damage. I think the way I'd like to see the energy represented is in pips somewhere, like little yellow pips that go along. It's just a lot easier to see a bar than a number a lot of the time, and the number is like the cheapest way of doing it in terms of implementation, but it's not always the best in terms of, you know, making people aware of something.
Freaking laser.
Oh, that used my shield. I should have read the card. That's what the writing on the card is for. Okay, so the laser that I picked up consumes your shield and turns it into attack, which is a cool ability, but I should have read it. Okay, so the shield stabilizer combines in an interesting way with the laser then, because you can stock up on shield, save it for a few rounds, and then release it all as a laser. That's a really nice card synergy. And that's what you want in these types of games. I've definitely played a few people's attempts at these games where you couldn't immediately see interesting card synergies, and I think a lot of the time that comes from the fact that, you know, people implement sort of abilities in their game or whatever, and they are just sort of numerical and not logic based, whereas to make the cards feel interesting to combo in something like a deck builder, you do really need this stuff where it's like, okay, this maintains shield between turns, and then the laser interacts with the shield in another way, which means that the laser and the shield stabilizer being in my deck at the same time becomes a combo that is something that people will deliberately try and build towards. And if your game doesn't have that quality to it, then it's failing at what people want out of this genre. That is literally the strategy part. I think having an extra dongle of energy every turn is probably one of the most helpful things we could get. Where are you going on your holidays? Oh, I thought me and Phil, we thought we might go to RZ46G1. You know? You know, me and Phil, we said we might go back to RZ46G1. It's nice there this time of year, isn't it? It's nice. They've got all of the, all of the pelicans come out this time of year. But have you thought instead about maybe going to RZ46G1? Well, actually, that's the same name, isn't it? That's the same name. It's very confusing that they made two planets, two different hotel resort planets, so close together, and yet gave them the same name. They're obviously not the same planet because one is blue and one is brown, but it makes it very difficult to decide where to go on your holidays, doesn't it? Sorry, I went somewhere else then for a moment. I don't know what the medication is kicking in or something. Here we go. Everyone on the whole planet is called Doug. I never know what pop culture references to make because I never know how old people are in the chat. Do you remember there was a TV series called Sliders? It was about people trying to get back to our dimension, and they would find a hole between dimensions. And this is old. This is like late 90s, I guess. It's like after X-Files, but not that old. And I love the idea that they would go to a dimension where everyone is called Doug. And that's like, everything else is the same as ours, but it's the Doug dimension. Right, they are going to cannon me. I think I need to be shielded from that. Okay. I'm very excited to get up to 4 power. It's like when you've played the genre so much and you're just like, yeah, I know that getting an extra power is going to be a big deal. That's like a milestone in these games. Sorry. Right. We're using up all our power now. That's the first time that's happened. Take that. I don't know if you can see the character portrait for the enemy. They're sort of under the chat right now. Maybe my head is over them. Let me do a full screen version of the... So I will say the name of this game, Stellar Rogues, it's not sort of jumping out at me as the most creative name. I think I'm getting rogue fatigue generally when it comes to indie game marketing. And that doesn't mean I don't like roguelikes. I think it's still one of my favourite things in games when it's done well. But I think roguelikes that have rogue in the title just doesn't do anything for me, because it's like, I don't know, I'm never going to just search the word rogue and play a game because it has rogue in the title, right? So I think it's maybe better having a theme-based name, having a name based on the universe you're developing or something, but I don't know, my preference and experience might not line up with other people's in that regard, but it kind of puts me off a little bit when things are called Rogue and they have Rogue in the title. Just feels unimaginative. I also wouldn't want it to have cards or deck in the title. It just sort of undermines the idea that I'm engaging with a sort of fantasy science fictional world, you know? Right, I need to not use the incendiaries when their shield is up because it's a waste. Although they come back round, don't they? I don't have a shield stabilizer. Oh yeah, I don't. I think it's fine. Yeah, I mean that is one of the things that happens when you don't have images on your cards yet, and I know that would be like a later on thing, but you know, at a glance, you're not going to read them every time, so I just go, oh, there's 2 yellow things up there. I'm sure one of them is a shield stabilizer. Dear reader, it was not a shield stabilizer. It feels quite well balanced in terms of the, you know, gradual increase of the difficulty, I think. Can I take that off? So I don't have a way to trash that card when it's no longer useful to me, which is a bit poo-poo. Yeah, they're burning. That's a sort of damage over time effect, I guess. You know what we love? We love a damage over time effect. Shield plus available power times 2 drains power for this turn. That sounds good. We'll get one of them. Hopper. I'm glad that I can't code when I'm listening to someone speak at all. I can't do anything involving typing if someone is talking. I had to stop listening to any sort of rap music or anything with someone speaking in it when I'm writing, or my mind just cannot cope. Shield plus available power times 2. There's no point doing that this time because I can't save the shield for next time. Already starting to see some really cool potential combos between these cards though. It's good. Let's put the attack boost in the slot. Can't do anything else. Oh yeah, it is a long map. We won't necessarily do the whole thing. We have one more game on the list after this, which is a very chilled game, so it's not going to be a sort of play along, I get stuck and you help me solve puzzles type games, because Cosmotiles is really chilled out. I've played it once before. Right, they're quite small, so I think I should just go in with all of the attacky type stuff and just hammer them, really. So yeah, we'll a couple more combats in this, and then we'll take a look at Cosmotiles, which was already a pretty good game the first time I played it, and I think has had some tweaks. It's got hexagons, it's got building a thing out of hexagons. I'm a big fan of hexagons. I think, you know, they get a bad rap. People can be quite cruel towards hexagons in the wider world, quite nasty about them, you know. Those hexagons coming over here with their 6 sides. Taking jobs away. Ooh, fuel to the fire. You can double that damage over time effect. Now that is the kind of card that I'm always attracted to in these games, and I think it's what in Magic the Gathering they call a Jimmy card, or like a Jimmy play, where it's like it's not a very easy thing to pull off, right? setting the enemy ship on fire is already quite difficult because you have to hit it when it doesn't have any shield left. But then being able to do that and then to double that damage over time effect, there's something really kind of seductive about that. So this is the kind of card that I love to see in a deck builder, because it's the very high risk, very high reward card where most of the time you're not going to be able to pull this off. Most of the time this is going to be useless. And the 1 or 2 times you get it to work, it's going to be like, yes, so good. And that's one of the things that it's really good to see in a deck builder, is this kind of range of cards that are just always helpful, right? Like getting another shield card or whatever. And then some cards where it's like, this is useful in a very specific edge case, and I'm probably not going to get that edge case, but I'm going to go and try for it. Big shield. That was a real waste of that big shield card because it was a pink one, which means it expires, but that's fine. Sounds like Dutch Daniel is another Jimmy player. I don't know if Jimmy is the name for it, but basically in Magic the Gathering they have a few different player archetypes that they talk about. You can read whole articles about this. I might pop one in the chat if I remember to. And yeah, they have like a type of player which is someone who just wants to do the most efficient thing to win. They have a type of player who is very driven by theme and doesn't really care about winning. And then there's like it's a Spike is the one that wants to win, I think, and a Jimmy is the person that wants to play the interesting combinations of cards and like pull off this crazy thing, and they don't really care if they can reliably do it, right? So the same principle applies to other CCGs. So you might have some deck in Hearthstone or whatever that you never win with, but it has a really cool win condition, and that means if you ever do manage to pull it off, you just feel fantastic. It feels like you've pulled off a heist, you know? And I'm very much one of those players. And understanding those different types of player psychologies, or at least just knowing that they exist and having them in your mind as player types who are going to play your game, very, very helpful for any sort of game that has engine building in of some description. Doesn't necessarily have to be cards. Any sort of engine building where you are, you know, dueling and then building up to some sort of win state will have these different ways of winning that different players prefer, and it's not always about efficiency. You know, some players will be the theme-driven players and they'll just want all the fire stuff because they like the idea of having a fire spaceship, and that isn't because the fire is more efficient. It's just a cool idea. We're going to get the fire one again so we can double down on my fire build. Yeah, Fred, I think that's a good point about the sound effects. There's already a really good set of sound effects in this game, but like every interaction with like hovering over a card and stuff, it would be good to have audio on that as well. Right, more fire. Heavy shield. Another fire doubler. There's an asteroid belt across there. We're going to play up to the asteroid belt, see what the asteroid belt does, and then check out some Cosmotiles, I think. Right, I can't shield this turn. So let's just get some equipment in place. Oh, I don't want to waste that pink card, but I am nearly dead in this game. I forgot to fire that time. That was stupid. So I'm guessing this red character type is the one that hardly ever blocks. I don't know. I haven't really been paying attention to the enemies and seeing if I can learn anything about them, which I think is kind of normal for an early stage of one of these games. I'm much more focused on my build and what I'm doing, and then maybe I will pay attention to what the enemies are later on. Right, the fire's going to kill him this turn. Yeah! Satisfying. They got a little shot out after they'd exploded. Maybe I should have a fire extinguisher, seeing as I'm dishing out so much fire myself. Yeah, I think with sound design, a lot of it is just about like being comprehensive and trying to cover everything. Like that whoop empowerment sound is cheesy, right? But it sounds like what it means, and it's in the right place. All of those little interactions there, the firing had sound effects in the right place. It wasn't overpowering, which is good, because in a combat game where you are maybe hitting like 20 or 30 hits before something is destroyed, you want the destruction to be really loud, but you don't want every single hit to be really loud, because it can be really, really grating after a while. Right, they're going to cannon me. Don't cannon me, bro. I also like that some of these missiles and stuff are quite slow. It makes it feel weighty. Right. Barrage. And they're going to cannon me again. So let's do our heavy shield this time, just so we've got a chance of surviving. You've got like the whoosh sound when the cards come in. I think hovering over them, what would be really nice, right? If you think of like in movies where, like in Minority Report, they have this like tactile interface where Tom Cruise is like with all of these things. Because you're in a sci-fi setting, you don't necessarily want your cards to feel like pieces of paper, but you want them to have some of the qualities of that. And I would say maybe when I hover over one of these, instead of doing what you do with paper cards where they sort of move up and they wiggle a little bit, I think having them in a square way like this makes sense because they're panels on a computer. But it'd be nice to sort of highlight the one you're on, you know, maybe expand it slightly, and then if you imagine that sort of kind of that's the sound like when you highlight things, and if you went across them all, you'd get like a highlight go along like around each one as it sort of gets a highlighted border and maybe grows a little bit, and it's sort of like beep 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 beep, like either like beep 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 like you're going through a Pip-Boy in Fallout, or a sort of like, I don't know, it's a soft synth sound to sort of highlight that you are hovering on the cards as you do that. I think that would be a really tiny little touch that wouldn't make much difference, but would make me happy. There we go. We got to the asteroid belt. I'm going to turn that one off now. That is really good, and I'd be interested to see where that goes. Really, really interesting game. And I got quite told off this week when I basically, one of the videos I put out this week, I talked about how if your game isn't original, you should stop making it. And I think some people took that a bit literally, and they were like, what do you mean? And like, first off, this is a channel for people who are already making games, know what they're doing a little bit, and are capable of taking advice from another adult as an adult, right? So if I give advice and it sounds like bad advice, I am not going to come round your house and force you to take my advice. So like, if anything I say sounds a bit extreme, just see it as a provocation rather than a you must do this. But this is a very good example of a game where 90% of the DNA is tried and tested stuff where we know how it works, and what you've done here is sort of executed all of that really well. And one of the things that I often feel disappointed by is when someone says, oh, I've made a game in this genre, and it's just missing loads of the standard things of this genre. And that game, what we were just playing, Stellar Rogues, has got everything it needs to do to succeed. And like, everything else is just going to be adding content and adding polish, right? The graphic design of the cards, it's not fantastic yet, but when they look like Star Realms cards or whatever, and the kind of text size is a bit better, you know, maybe some of the fonts are better chosen and so on, it's going to be fantastic. It just needs polish, it just needs more content, but all of the ingredients are there. And like from a gameplay perspective and a sort of strategy design perspective, you could see there that I was able to pick a set of cards and go, right, I'm gonna pick the set of cards that allow me to charge up my laser using my shield, and I'm also going to try and do the fire build at the same time. So there was a sense that there were builds that you're building towards, and I've seen more games than I care to remember in this genre where they just haven't really seem to understand that basic idea of there being builds and that the player is trying to build a particular type of build. So I think that one is already well on its way to being like a better one of those games. Yeah, I mean, someone mentioned a competitor in terms of like a similar game doing a similar thing, and yeah, play that if you haven't, because you always need to play the competition. It's important. So you can get upset about how much better their game is and cry. Look at how lovely this... We're going to have a very zen end to the stream, doing about 30 minutes of Cosmotiles, which is the most relaxing game and doesn't require a whole lot of thought. And I don't say that as to diminish it, because I think it's a very well-made game, kind of structurally, and it's very appealing, and I quite like the fact that it's quite casual. Sometimes that's what you're making, and you know, it just needs to do that well. So this is a sort of tile laying game. So if you've played a board game like Carcassonne, or any game where you're building a place laying tiles, it is one of those. And the developer of this sent it over a while. I think I played this in a stream a few months ago, actually. And I've been meaning to cover it in a video because it was sent to me a very long time ago. And I think it's a really good example of like minimalism as well, both in terms of like how it looks visually and the gameplay. But this is definitely a genre of game, of tile laying games, where again, looking at board games and looking at card games that do the same thing can be a really good way of getting ideas, because there are lots of board games that are about laying hexagonal tiles and scoring differently based on where they go and stuff. And the most complicated one I've ever played is called Calico, and that one had a total... Calico has a total mismatch between how simple it looks and how complicated it is. Because, like, this looks cute and simple, and it is cute and simple, whereas Calico looks cute and simple, and then it's just the most brain-melting thing. And I don't like that. I like the aesthetic to match up with the difficulty of the game, you know? Otherwise, it's evil and it's tricking me. Take a look at the controls. Okay, rotate the planet with the right mouse button. Place a block with the left, and rotate a block with the... I don't know if rotating the block was in before. I guess it must have been. Place this block adjacent to... So it's going to be quite hard to see, especially if you're on a phone, but these blocks represent the tiles I can play, and the middle is the actual tile type, and the outside is what it scores next to. So these grey and brown ones are going to score for being next to each other. So I'm going to put a mountain there, and then I'll put a brown thing next to it. So they want to be next to their opposites. And then this wants to be next to a grey. A very simple scoring rule. Actually, using the mouse wheel to turn those round feels really good. That's a very good sort of control design decision. I really like that. does it score based on the number of? Yeah, that's next to 1 and it scores 2. And then it's next to 2 and it scores 5. Okay, and over here it scores 5 as well. Gamma's played Calico. Yeah, I really like that game, but it is like, you look at the art direction and everything and you think maybe it's going to be okay to play with an 8-year-old, and it is absolutely not. And I guess adults should be able to have cute games as well, but I tried to play it with my kids and it did not go down very well because it was too brainy for their little brains. Yeah, so he was saying about the symbols. I think one usability improvement I'd like to see here is like some sort of pattern on the hexagons up here so you can see which one you're using. One of the things people are going to struggle with is the distinction between the forests and I guess you would call this a mesa, because this is quite close to red, and the red-green colorblind people, which is 1/10 of men, I think it's 1/10 of men can't tell red from green, which I think personally is a skill issue. But, you know, we're supposed to take this sort of stuff seriously as designers. I personally think if you're an adult and you can't tell the difference between red and green, you know, you just need to learn how to. Just part of being a grown-up, you know. You can't just walk out in front of traffic and say, "Oh, sorry, I don't know which man's the red man and which man's the green man." I am joking. If you're new to the channel and you don't understand my sense of humour, you think, "Oh, this guy's been really ableist about colourblind people." Yeah, that was kind of the bit I was doing, was like, what if I was really unreasonable and ableist about colourblindness? But it's really common, right? And I think a lot of people don't think of it as a disability, and like, you know, disabilities become disabilities when they prevent you doing something, which means that the disability isn't natural. The disability comes from things not being designed to accommodate you, right? And that means when you use color as a differentiator in a game mechanic, you also have to use something else. So at the moment, the tiles on the board, this looks like a forest, this looks like a mesa, they're well differentiated. But when they're at the side of the screen, it is just totally dependent on color. You have to remember, okay, if you have a audience and that's like 10% of the dudes in the audience are going to be colorblind in that way, and a small percentage of the women as well. You do get colorblind women, but it's not as common. And you just saying, "Hey man, I don't want your money." Yeah, the closer we get towards the end of the stream, the more demented I get. I'm sorry. I'll turn it down a bit. Oh, I put them next to the same ones. I missed. Okay. So yeah, you can see how it works. You get a hand of 5, and then you're only actually playing 3 of them and throwing 2 of them away, which is a nice idea. It makes I think between all of the pieces you get and the ways that you have to think about how they score, there's quite a lot of, like, you call it decision space in like really abstract game design talk. The decision space is quite big in terms of the things that you have to think about and consider when you are trying to play this game, and it's kind of deceptively big for how simple the game looks and feels, and it never feels overwhelming. It definitely feels frustrating sometimes, but mostly because you mess the map up yourself and then you feel frustrated with yourself, which is a good thing to aim for. You want players to, again, feel like well, not always. There's no universal what you want players to want, but often in games where players are building things and making decisions about where things go, if they get into a position where they've sort of messed up, you want them to feel like that's their fault and it's a product of their poor planning and not the game just being unfair. And I think this nails that really well. Leaving these little one spaces that you can't fill up is very, very disappointing, and it makes me feel very ashamed of myself, you know, a visceral level. It's that, oh, I've left this green hexagon here that I can't build on, and that means that no one is ever going to love me ever again. So soft, yeah, you said it could be repetitive. I think it could get repetitive, and I think it's sort of in the category of sort of Zen games where you sort of don't mind because you're just sort of playing it while you chat, and it's kind of what match 3s do a lot of the time. If you don't have a time limit on a match 3, you just sort of zone out and go, yeah, whatever, moving colours around. But one of the things I will already say, to its credit, is that when I played this before, some of the later levels feel very different, and they feel different because we have like different tile sort of ratios, I guess, and then different shapes of the land masses on the planet. And yeah, let me just one of the things I want to check is when the dev sends me these, I get a little note to say if there's a particular thing they want to focus on. So Jang said, please focus on game pace. I'm improving the fun parts of the game. I would like to know how to keep the game in a sort of flow state. So yeah, as a first level, this is fine. Oh, look, we're getting some single pieces now. They weren't in the last build of the game. And I was like, man, your game is triggering my my perfectionism, and I need to be able to fill some of these gaps in. And he's put it in now. But you don't get many of them. And again, that choice of you pick 3 things and you throw 2 away feels good, feels interesting. That's that one there. So yeah, on the colorblindness topic, there are some filters that you can run an image through as well. I've used them at work before. I mean, you can just get colorblind Jeff to come and look at your game and go, hey, colorblind Jeff, can you differentiate these colors? But if you don't have a colorblind Jeff nearby, you might have to use one of these filters. But there's these filters online where you can like upload a JPEG into it, and it will show you what a person with different types of color blindness sees, which is cool. And oh, that there, and then that there. Oh, that was very satisfying. Oh, these games are about sort of spotting opportunities, and the more the board gets crammed up, it's like there are less opportunities the more full the board gets. But that means that if you take them too quickly, you're more likely to sort of mess yourself up and like miss a good opportunity. Because at the beginning, there isn't any value judgment. Put anything wherever you want, right? It doesn't really matter. But later on, everything is relational, and everything is like everything I put down is it has to do with everything else that's already there, right? So you get the less places to put stuff. But the whole kind of thing is shifting because every place you put is going to have a vastly different impact on your scoring than at the start of the game. And that's kind of generally, anytime you're filling up a board with stuff, it kind of creates that, and it's a really nice feeling. New planet is unlocked. Okay, so that's a change in the game flow as well. So we can carry on building this, or we can get to the next planet, but I do want to fill the planet up, so... I'm just putting things anywhere now. I like the sort of soft thud when you place the tiles as well. You could imagine there being a temptation to make that a sort of click sound. But the fact that it's a very soft thud, it feels more appropriate to the idea of building a planet and placing a mountain. And it's not like a big... It's a very gentle sound, but it's satisfying, and it's also not what you might initially expect it to be. Planet complete. Oh, look. Where do you want to live? Barbara. Have you been to the lagoon? Is it shaped like male genitalia? Yes. Oh, let's go then. I'll only go to the lagoon if it looks a bit like male genitalia. Well, you're in luck. Have you got one that looks a bit like a teddy bear's head? Yes. I don't want to go there. Let's go to the other one. Okay, next planet. Who else? Sorry, just reading back to see if there's any questions. Jan or Yan? I'm going to go for Yan. Said, you're a trained musician. Not trained. No, definitely not trained. Yeah, I play a few things, and I guess I'm a sort of songwriter, producer type person. So I make music, and I enjoy it. And actually, since I left my last full-time job, and I've been doing YouTube and doing freelance design, I've had a lot more time to just mess around with other creative things. I have some days where there's no time, but like I did a job for someone recently where they wanted they're a cartoonist and an animator, and they have sort of their own OCs, like original characters that they draw, and they wanted a theme tune for like a cartoon that never existed, like this imaginary cartoon, and they're gonna like animate the intro section. And I had a really fun couple of weeks making that for them, like a sort of 80s like power pop sort of Bonnie Tyler I Need a Hero type intro to a cartoon. Really, really fun. So I definitely not a professional musician, and I'm not trained in the sense that I've never had proper training. I think I would really like to have some formal lessons on something in the next couple of years, just to learn more music theory, because I can sort of play things by muscle memory, but I often don't really know what I'm doing. And so when someone said about how this could get boring, you're probably right, but you can maybe already see from this level that the layout of the map is so wildly different, and it kind of does change how it feels to do a little bit. But yeah, someone said, can we have some videos about game music? I would love to. And I do have one video on the channel where Smith, who made Hazard Pay, I sort of made him a track for his game. And I would like to turn that into a series where I sort of talk to a game developer and get them to talk about their game, and then I make them a song. And I did that pilot. It didn't do very well as a single video, but I am going to maybe do more of those because they're fun to do even if they're not very popular. It's like a mini documentary where I talk to someone and they tell me about the sort of creative direction of their game and the type of mood and world they're trying to build, and then I make some music for that. And I made like a little sort of dystopian synthwave track for his little puzzle game, and I think it came out pretty decent. I don't know if he's actually put it in the game yet, but I think he intends to. So I don't know if I'll do videos talking about game music in a sort of instructional, here's what you should do way, because I don't feel like an authority on the subject. But in terms of like me learning how to do it and practicing doing it, and then making content where it's me showing me doing it and like telling you what I'm learning, I think that's kind of more down my rabbit hole. That's not a real idiom, I just made that up, but that's kind of more the sort of thing I would feel comfortable doing, because I talk about game design and creative direction on the channel because that is what I do for a job, and it's what I've done for a job for the last 3 years, and it's what I was teaching before that. And the music is more like a hobby that I'm sort of semi-professional about, I guess. Let's have a look. Dwarf Romantic is a fantastic name. Yeah. Again, thanks to everyone who is kind of giving constant feedback about the game, because I don't think Jang is here today, but we will still be able to look through and kind of look at it afterwards and find some of the helpful suggestions people are making. But yeah, I love the way that the planets look different, and the just the variations in their layout does kind of do quite a lot to make them feel different. I think we did discuss some other potential rules for scoring tiles, but I think they also need to make sense. And at the moment, everything has the same scoring rules, which is it scores for being next to a different type of thing. And that's nice and it's easy to remember. And I think if you introduced a different scoring rule, like, oh, this tile scores more for every different thing that's next to it, right? Then you would have to have a thematic reason for that made sense, right? So, for example, if I had one pieces that were cities, and then they scored more for every different thing around them, like, let's say, I can't find an example here, because all of my spares have more than one color around them, but let's say I had like this grey one here, and then I had a special city tile and I put it here, and then it scored like one for the pink and one for the grey, that kind of thing. That would kind of make sense because it's a different type of tile, and there's like a reason why it scores differently. There's like a kind of logical reason that, oh, it is a different type of thing. But then you are no longer making the world, you're also making civilization, and that kind of takes us in a different direction thematically. So, but I do like the idea that maybe these single hex tiles could be cities, and then it's kind of like, you know, you've done all the geography of the planet, and now you're plopping the sort of civilization onto it. It could be a fun thing because you don't get these until later on in the planet as well. And if you had different variations in the city and they could be different textures and different models, then when they come out, that could feel really fun each time because it's like a little moment of surprise. So I need that one there. And that one there. Yeah, Dutch, you are totally right that you can have such a simple game like this, and if you make the scoring rules too complex, it will make people's brains melt. And it's not necessarily about never having any complex rules. It's also to do with how frequently they come around, right? So if we had a type of tile that hurts your brain a bit, you have to think a bit more about it because it has particular scoring conditions. I can't think of an example because we don't have it in the game. But if you had that and it came out in every hand, that's a very different experience in terms of pacing to like having a few every match where you don't have to think about it that often. And all of these things can have different impacts. Okay, yeah, so this one is... These are kind of like continents, so you can see the hex grid on these. I think basically we can only build inside these pits. So we're getting a different type of planet again. And I know it's just a cosmetic difference, but it's enough to just add a bit of delight when you go from one level to the next, which is all... That's all I want. I just want a little bit of delight in my video game. That's what I come here for. Excuse me, Steam. Could you please recommend a game that is delightful? I think we should make that a category. I think it's an underrated quality for games to have. Yeah, Cookies, that is a good example, something like Stardew where like aesthetically. Oh, look, we've got 2 different colors that don't go with these at all, so I'm going to build them somewhere else. So yeah, in Stardew, it's like the theme and the art are telling you it's a particular type of game, and then your experience is just... I mean, Animal Crossing is the same as well, right? When you get to a point where your island has loads and loads of fruit trees, and you, in your head, you've just committed to the idea that today I'm going to pick all the fruit, it just becomes a bit of a nightmare. And you think, oh, what have I done? I brought capitalism to this lovely island, and now I have to live with the consequences. So you can see how we've had a couple of green and brown tiles, and we've had a couple of grey and blue tiles. Now I'm getting grey and green tiles, and now this is giving me like a meta level decision of like, well, do I put these in with the grey ones and try and build out this bit, or do I make a grey and green area and then come back to this when I'm back on grey and blue? So this is not a randomized bag of stuff, and I think that's okay. I think what this is doing is playing to the strengths of it being a digital game rather than a board game. And if this was a board game, these would be coming out of a randomized bag or a deck or whatever, or 10 points. That's good. But it's a video game, so let's lean into the fact that it's a video game. That is one of the sort of ground principles that they use all the way through Hearthstone, that they have since the start of the game. It's been going like 12 years now, isn't it? Something like that. Is that in Hearthstone, they try and do as many things as possible that you couldn't do with real cards. And although I look at this and I see, okay, this is a game that is based on a genre of board games, you don't have to do everything as if you're simulating a board game. So if you want to do what the dev's done here and have the tiles come out in a particular order, or have a set of a particular color come out at once, and that makes the game better. I mean, from my perspective, it is making the game better, because it's kind of forced me to make this decision about, do I have a separate continent for each color combination, or do I start to mix them and have a continent of 3? And I've made a decision not to do that and not to mix them, because I'm not a barbarian, you know. I wouldn't do that. Like blue and brown and green on the same area, why would you do that? Delightful is a subcategory of cozy. I don't know why I find that so funny. I've been thinking a lot about that recently. So there's this distinction you get in sort of like media studies between a mode, a genre, and a mode. And like, one of the reasons I struggle a lot on this channel with horror games is that, like, horror isn't really a game genre. It's like it's not a set of mechanics, is it? It's a mood. So you still actually need a game genre, right? You can have a horror game that is a first-person adventure. You can have a horror game that is a card game. You can have a horror game that is a strategy game. Because horror describes the thematics and the sort of general thing that people are going to the game for. But it doesn't really describe the gameplay. And that's why I would say, from a game design perspective, it's not a genre. And cozy is the same, right? This is me practicing a video I'm probably going to do in the next couple of weeks, but I've seen lots of people in the kind of cozy game space like put out videos where it's like, oh, the cozy game genre has these problems, and the cozy game genre is doomed because people keep just making the same farming game. And it's like, well, that's because farming is a genre, right? It's a set of reliable mechanics that work in a particular way that deliver a certain type of experience. Cozy isn't a genre, it's just a sort of category for everything that you find sort of cute and inoffensive, and that's fine. Like, I'm not shit talking cozy gamers. I like a lot of games in that kind of space, but I think when people get kind of confuse the difference between a genre and a mode or whatever else you want to call it, then it's very easy to get out of that problem by understanding that horror and cozy are not game genres, right? They do not. They might work better with certain types of game mechanics, right? Farming works with cozy because it is about caring and looking after something, and that has a particular emotional feel to it. And certain types of game mechanics work well with horror because they're about disempowering you or whatever. But they are not genres in themselves. And so I always get a bit worried when I get horror games sent in, because I look at it and it says this is a horror game, and it's like, that doesn't tell me enough. Like, it doesn't tell me enough. What am I actually doing in the game? Am I just walking around and being scared? Because that's like a horror game that is a walking simulator, right? It's, I don't know. Anyway, that's my ramble. I will formulate it into an essay that makes more sense in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, cozy horror actually. Like, I don't know if any of you played the demo of We Harvest Shadows yet, which is the sort of. I know it's not the only sort of horror farming game, but God, it does that combination really, really well. And yeah, if you haven't played it yet, and the idea of sort of looking after a beautiful little farm, but then occasionally getting freaked out by ghosts, if that appeals to you, oh, it's very well executed. And one of the things that game made me feel when I played the demo of it was that there aren't enough horror games that have that contrast in, right? And if you watch horror films, they often are all about contrast. You have to have like a sense of there being a real world or some sort of normality that is threatened by the ghost or whatever thing it is. And you don't get that in games because it's just relentless terrifying you the entire time. And I think, you know, classic ones like Silent Hill did this very well, of sort of slipping between the state in the game where you felt more safe and the state in the game where it was clearly telling you that things are getting scary now. And yeah, We Harvest Shadows, which is the big cozy farming game with horror in, I think the way it kind of plays with those two modes at the same time is absolutely fantastic. I haven't played Tiny Nightmares. Is that a sort of side view platformery type one? Because there's definitely that trope that we have in horror media generally, where you kind of make something creepy by using something that's for kids, right? It's kind of what makes Choo Choo Charles scary, is not just, oh, it's a train. It's that he kind of looks like he should be a children's character, but he's gone bad. And that sort of, we have like a gut reaction to that sort of thing where we're like, oh, this is wrong because my brain has this thing. You know, my brain has clowns or the carnival in the category of children's entertainment or something, and you're making it scary, right? And that makes it more scary, kind of thing. I don't know if that's kind of what goes on with Tiny Nightmares. Yeah, We Harvest Shadows is good. I mean, there are some cheesy moments, and the main character sort of talks to themselves and switches a lot between, I don't know, the way that the character is written is a little bit cheesy in places, because he's sort of giving himself pep talks like, hey buddy, it's gonna be all right. It's like, who are you talking to, man? But it's a very good game, and I can't wait to play the full version of that. I've been looking forward to that a lot. I think horror comedies is an interesting contrast point, yeah. I mean, I think a turning point in horror cinema was when we started to get the sort of torture porn films like Saw and Hostel and stuff. Because that, to me, is... I mean, it's scary, right? I'm not going to say it's not scary, but it's not enjoyable in the same way that, like, a zombie movie is, or, like, I don't know, like The Exorcist or something, where... And then Evil Dead and stuff like that, where there is a sort of fundamental silliness to all the sort of prosthetics and the over-the-top gore and stuff that is... it's not necessarily about pain, right? It's just about sort of spectacle. And it's spectacle in the same sort of area as like something like Mortal Kombat, you know, just like gross, like excessive. And that is why you can get horror and comedy to go well together, because, you know, seeing horrific bodily imageries when it's framed in a particular way is just like an extreme form of slapstick, right? Like if you take a zombie movie where everyone's getting eaten and then you put the over the top of it when everyone's running away from the zombies. Instant classic you've got right there. We lived on the big blue planet, but we were forced to dig down into these weird shaped holes. It says game over. Is that because I failed or? Yeah, so I said some stuff the last time I played this game where it feels like the planets that we do get to play, they feel like they have enough variety to them, and building this into a larger game, if you added more planets, I wouldn't want to see much repetition. Like, I'd rather the game just had 5 planets or whatever, and they felt very different from each other, rather than just keep throwing new planets at me and they're all a bit similar. So I know the dev was looking at researching different types of games in terms of how they unlock their content, and one of the references that we had was Mini Metro, where, you know, they're all based on cities in the world, so you only have 5 or 8 or however many cities there are, and you just retry them until you kind of score better and stuff. So I think that was the sort of direction that they were going with for this one. Cosmotiles will be a horror game for min-max players. Yeah, there's definitely a like real, oh, it's kind of triggering something when I can't fill out those last few tiles type thing. So yeah, thank you. I should have pressed the goal button. I will play these 4 games until I get £1 million in super thanks. Yeah, thank you all for joining. It's been really great. We're going to do one of these once a month. So if I don't know how many people in the chat have just never been on this channel before or just like randomly stumbled across it. But what I usually do on here is I have a backlog of games where people have sent me games they're working on, and I make videos about those that I try and keep them to about 10 minutes. I've done ones in the past that got up to like 45 minutes because I was going through like every bit of UI in someone's game and being like, this should be over here. I try not to do that anymore. But yeah, that's a series called Indies Under the Knife. They come out every Thursday. And I might end up doing more than one a week if I get to a point where I can do. But that's kind of like the core of what I do on this channel. And then I do video essays on game design, just based on what I'm thinking about at the time or what questions people have in the comments and so on. And then this stream tonight is a monthly thing at the end of the month where people who are in the Indie Game Clinic Discord can have their games reviewed by me. And I quite like doing this because it means we get to see some of these games evolved. You know, I've played Cosmotiles twice. I've played, what else did I play twice? Land Trains that we saw earlier is one that I've seen a couple of times now. And, you know, I can't do that with every game. I can't do that with the dozens of games that get sent in via my form for Indies Under the Knife. But with the Discord community, I'm able to kind of offer that and do it a bit more frequently because, you know, you guys are helping to support this channel by being part of the Discord and supporting on Patreon. So I want to be able to give something back. And we are constantly looking at ways to add more stuff. I don't know. Oh, thank you, Dutch Daniel. It says 6 done. No. 6 done. 999,994 more to go. Yeah, I'm definitely not committing to the trying to get a million thing. Thank you, that's very sweet. And then yeah, in terms of other things that are coming up, we're doing a game jam in April, which is a collaborative jam And the collaboration is not really the theme of the game, right? It's just a rule of the game jam that you have to collaborate. On the Discord, we will be having some more discussions to try and generate the theme of the game as well, but I want to keep that reasonably loose. And I'm probably going to take part in that jam as well. I don't know what I want to make yet. I'll talk to some people and form a team and work out what we want to make together. But I know that I don't want to make a story game, because last month I did this... Oh, I might as well plug that now and show you, actually. But last month I took part in a game jam called Fix Your Hearts or Die, which is a David Lynch themed game jam, because we lost David Lynch in the... I was going to say in the fires. I mean, he didn't necessarily die as a direct result of the fires, but it was kind of linked to that. And someone created a game jam last month to sort of honor David Lynch as a sort of memorial thing, and I took part in that. And I was in a team with a narrative designer who was pretty much leading the game, really, and then I was kind of engineering it in RPG Maker. And let's have a look if it's on here. Fairview Slipstream, there we go. This was a really fun experience, actually. I got a little bit stressed at various points because we were just trying to do too much. You can see here that it's like a sort of Earthbound type RPG Maker game in a modern setting, but then there are all of these sort of cinematic close-ups. And Isaac, the person who was the narrative designer on this, was sort of writing the story as we went along. I was implementing scenes in RPG Maker. And then Isaac was able to sort of track down quite a few pixel artists and get them to do like additional little assets for the game, and also these close-ups which make it feel like what we were going for, right? Is, if you've seen Twin Peaks before, it was David Lynch and his team of other kind of writers and directors. They were taking like a sort of 80s cheesy TV soap like Dallas and sort of subverting it and making like a creepy version of Dallas. And what we tried to do with this was like that, but for a 1992 JRPG. So it's like, it looks like it's going to be Pokemon or I mean, that's kind of what Earthbound was anyway. Earthbound was already like, let's make a cute looking game and then make it weird and creepy as hell. Yeah, very sad that David Lynch has passed away. And I really hope he doesn't get like posthumously Me Too'd or something, because I can't handle that happening with more of my idols. But, you know, I get the impression he was a very nice man, but didn't have much time for people outside of his sort of creative pursuits, which is definitely something I can relate to. But yeah, this was a really interesting experience. I think the game that we made was a labour of love. It's not very gamey. It's very much like a film script with just scenes that you walk into and stuff happens. But I think the underlying story is quite interesting. And it does feel genuinely Lynchian. It feels very Twin Peaksy. But it does mean that the next time I do a short project or a game jam game, I am not going to go anywhere near narrative. And I just want to make... something where nice shapes move around and you get points or something like that. And I don't know what that is yet, but that's kind of my... I've been reflecting a lot because I've been talking to people a lot about collaboration and how to do collaborations on games. And one of the things I've been talking to people a lot about is like having explicit conversations with people about what you want to get out of the project, right? So you're going to make a game with someone and you've said, I'm going to do the art. You might have a learning goal for yourself. Like, I want to learn how to animate a walk cycle, right? And there might be other things that you absolutely don't want to do, right? Like, I'm kind of comfortable doing art in certain styles, but I don't want to animate. I don't want to animate characters walking around or anything like that. And that would mean for me, I don't want to learn to do that. So let's come up with a project where I don't do that, you know? And I think before you go into any sort of group projects or game jam projects where you're collaborating with people, it's really helpful to have that like reflection on what you want to do, what you don't want to do. You know, the thing we naturally do is we talk about our strong areas and we go, well, I can do this, and someone else goes, I can do this, and you're just sort of thinking about your skills. You're doing a skill audit, but you also need to be explicit about what you don't want to do, and then also like what you want to do, but you're not very good at it, right? So, you know, you might want to learn how to do some music, right? And that's then a case of not just saying, "Oh, do the music," but warning people that you're going to do the music, but the music might be terrible because you don't know how to do it, right? So these are all helpful conversations to have, and yeah, the gaming situation is like very upsetting. I got very into him when I was a teenager, and when I was like 18, after school, I went to art college for a year. I did like a foundation degree, and I used to get the train with this girl, who I won't name, and I lent her a load of my gaming comics, and she got really, really into him. And then like a couple of months later, she told me that she'd met him and stuff. And knowing, like, thinking back to that and knowing that when I was 18, I knew another 18-year-old, and Neil Gaiman was about doing his terrible Neil Gaiman stuff and was like 15 years older or whatever, and that I had inadvertently put her in a position where something could have happened to her because I'd made her a fan of Neil Gaiman. Just like, I was thinking about that recently, and it was just, like, terrible thought to have. Frederick said, collaboration jam, but you can only do stuff you're terrible. That's not a bad idea, right? Like, job swap, right? Like, if you worked in a studio with the same people all the time, I think that situation would be fantastic for that kind of game jam. Just like swap around and everyone does everyone else's job. You know, like the programmers do the art and vice versa. I think that would be a really good learning experience and very funny. Yeah. So yeah, that was anyway, sorry, rambling. Fairview Slipstream was the game we made for that game jam, and that is why I don't want to make a narrative game next, because oh my goodness, it broke my brain trying to set all the flags and stuff to make the narrative work. And it wasn't even a multiple choice narrative. It didn't have anything that game needed to remember. It was just stuff like, oh, you keep going back onto the world map, and the world map needs to be in a different state every time you come back from a different place. And that made it really difficult to QA, because I had to keep running the game from different places, and then the flags weren't set properly to make the game work. But in terms of like the channel and the community and everything, the other thing that we are trying to do is start a podcast, which I think we should get the first episode of in May. So in April we're doing Collab Jam, and then in May we're going to start the Game Devs Library podcast, which is the sort of placeholder name, right? But the concept behind this podcast is I read a book with my co-host, and the co-host is a different person each week. There'll be someone who works in games or someone who works in some creative industry and is interested in games, and we read a book and take notes on it and then tell you about it. So a similar format is like a book review podcast is Game Studies Study Buddies, which is a Range Touch. I've got my Range Touch hoodie on today, actually. A Range Touch podcast where Cameron and Michael read game studies books and talk about them. This would be a similar format, but with a different co-host each time, and we read through a book that may be about game design. It might be about something related to game design, like it could be like Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, which is a really good book to read if you ever have to visually design characters, right? And the idea is that the reviews aren't going to be exhaustive. We might give you a little note on each chapter of the book and tell you what was more or less helpful, but they are meant to be our subjective take on the book. So I will talk about how I think this book could be helpful to meet people making games, and if my co-host is another game designer, they'll probably talk about the same thing, but if they're an artist, they might talk about something different. So we'll be giving our sort of subjective takes and professional opinions on what we think people could take away from this book. So, you know, my experience of listening to similar podcasts is I hardly ever read along with them. I use them to kind of fill gaps in my knowledge, and there might be certain books where I'm like, that sounds entertaining enough, I'll read it even though I've heard this review. But I personally, when I started YouTube and I was watching all the content that was out there, I sort of got a bit distraught by how uninformed by theory a lot of the game dev content is. And I don't really want to do book reviews on YouTube, and I thought discussing books with someone else was a much more like a way to enliven it, right? Because I think one of the reasons why like books are not exciting to people is that it's a solitary pastime. But if you get two interesting people with different backgrounds and they talk about a book for 45 minutes or an hour or however long these things run, then that's a more interesting way of doing it. So that's going to be another thing that's coming up that will be sort of funded by the Patreon, and something that is made possible by that. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. I've got some interesting guests booked in already from kind of different backgrounds and sort of like people who are games writers or games programmers or journalists or whatever. And yeah, probably about 5 or 6 months of that is booked in already. So I've got a lot of reading to do. And I haven't done a lot of reading in the last couple of years, because when you go to grad school and you do a PhD, it sort of breaks your brain. You do so much reading in 3 years that you're just like, I've done enough reading. I don't need to do any reading in the rest of my life. And you just like, I'll read children's board books. I'll just read the Gruffalo from now on. I don't need anything more hardcore than that. Dutch Daniel says, how does that work with the copyright if you read the content of the book? I don't know, to be honest. I've heard enough people do it and not have any problems, so I'm not particularly worried. I know that if you reproduce sections of a book in print, you have to obtain permission. But I think if you talk about a book in the context of reviewing it, then I think that falls under fair use. And it sort of stands to reason, because, you know, if you've got an audience and you're reviewing a book and saying, hey, this is good, maybe you should buy it, that's beneficial, right? Which is different from like quoting a book for your own book, where you're using the content for your own ends. So I have a bookstore.org affiliate thing, which means that if people really want to read the books we're talking about, they can buy them off there. And that it's like an aggregator for small bookshops, which is quite cool. Yeah. Bookshop.org, sorry. So some of these books, they won't necessarily be available to everyone, because what it does, bookshop.org, is it finds a small bookshop near you that they're affiliated with, and you buy it from them through bookshop.org. And I haven't had any affiliate sales through this, but I wanted to set it up so that when I do talk about books or I recommend books, there is a place where people can go for them. And I didn't want that to be anything to do with Jeffrey Bezos, because he is my sworn enemy, and I keep offering to duel him. I keep offering to 1v1 him on Rust, and he doesn't respond to me. You know, I keep telling him I want a Street Fighter 2 Ryu mirror match. I say, Jeffrey Bezos, that I know that you play Sagat because you like the bald representation, and sometimes you play Dalsim. You're spoilt for choice, actually, in Street Fighter 2. You've got Dalsim, you've got Sagat. Plenty of bald representation for Jeffrey Bezos there. But I want you to 1v1 Ryu mirror match me in Street Fighter 2 on an arcade machine. And if I win, then you have to pay all of the corporation tax you owe the UK government for the past 10 years. Yeah, let me post the link. Let me just get the link for you. I don't know what the end user experience is of this thing. I hope people liked my my little bit of art I made today as well. Let me just... So this is a artist representation of what it's like when I look at your games. And I think it's sort of... people often talk about me roasting their games. They're like, I'm looking forward to you roasting my game. I think this is how people see me a little bit. It's like I'm a sort of powerful biomechanoid that can just destroy games by looking at them like that. Yeah, Fred said yeah, I don't, you know, I would never want to like shame people for not reading books, because I'm not a great reader. Like, I have to force myself to. But I think if you want a career in something, right, then you need to be a sponge. And some of that stuff's going to come from books. Some of the books you'll read and think, oh, this person doesn't really know what they're talking about. There's definitely some game design theory books that are like that. And some are just too abstract. Like, you know, Jesse Schell's Art of Game Design is a fantastic book, but it is incredibly broad. Everything that you learn in there could apply to designing a board game, designing a ride at Disneyland, which he has done, right? That's one of the cool things in his resume, is he designed like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, Florida, right? So with someone like Jesse Schell, you're looking at someone who is a game designer, who's designed loads of video games, but he's also a broad experience designer. And I think that's a cool thing to aspire to do, right? Is to just be someone who understands fun in like a really like broad level, so that you can, like, someone asks you to design a crazy golf course or like a laser tag arena, you'd be like, yeah, I can do that. Or escape room, you know, so yeah, I can do that. But yeah, it's hard to make yourself read books. And one of the things I've been reflecting about a lot recently as well, because I've got a video going up on Saturday which talks about how you get experience as a game designer. And like, my experience of growing up with computers is so different from someone who is like 20 or even 30 now, because I have had basically up until my early 20s without smartphones, and the experience of being bored when you're a teenager, like the likelihood that you are to like pick up a book or try to do some difficult activity with that time when you're bored is just so much higher. And I really think I would be such a... I mean, you can't really speculate on how you would be if you were born 10 years later or whatever. But I struggle now with not being on my phone all the time. And often I find, like, if I go for a long walk and I keep my phone in my pocket or I leave it at home, I can get so much work done in my head by just being out and walking around and not having that constant, like, dopamine searching thing. And I think it must be really hard to learn any hard thing if you've grown up in this sort of media saturated environment. I know I'm sort of getting Abe Simpson old man yells at cloud now, but I'm saying it out of empathy that, you know, I go on at people, but like, you should do this, you should do this, you should read a book, you should watch long boring GDC talks and all of this stuff. And it was a lot easier for me when I was younger to be a sponge in that way, because I didn't have like YouTube vying for my attention, TikTok vying for my attention, all of these very easy routes of just getting a quick fix of dopamine. I think we've made it harder to learn stuff. And that's why YouTube is awash with not very deep content about the beginner stages of something. You know, there's so much YouTube content about game dev that is just, hey guys, you should make a game. Yeah. Did you know you can make a little man move around on the screen? And it's like, where do you go if you want something deeper? You sort of have to force yourself to change your own media habits and say, oh, well, I don't like reading a book, but I'm going to do it this amount of times a day or whatever. And that takes a certain type of person. It takes a lot of effort, and you have to really want it. And I think that's just got worse and worse and worse. Like the better social media has got, quote unquote, better, the harder it is to focus on anything, and the more determined you have to be to do anything of merit, right? And like the goal of like being the sort of exceptional person that makes a game on their own and can do the art well and can do the programming well. That was always a very difficult goal, but it's particularly difficult now to build up that kind of rounded skill set in our current, like, everyone is TikTok brained kind of world. Alejo, making my dream game. I was always surprised when I taught at uni that when students came in, might have 50 students in a year, and I might have one or two of them that even know what GDC is, let alone have watched a GDC talk. And I know they're not very exciting or sexy because it's just professionals talking shop, right? But it is one of the best ways to learn. Like, watch people talk about a project that failed, and they're like actual good people who have made 10 games rather than just an endless slew of people who've made their first game and gone, oh, my game failed because it didn't make any money. It's like, well, of course it failed, it's your first game, you know. But yeah, there is a, you know, that saying, never be the smartest person in the room, which is supposed to encourage you to like go and seek out mentors who have a lot of experience and hang out with them. But I think we also have a bias towards like wanting to hang out with people who are closer to us in age or experience or whatever, which is fair enough, right? Understandable. But that does mean, like, I've heard it described on YouTube as a lot of the game dev YouTubers having this sort of children's TV presenter type personality. And I just think, like, I don't know. Like, again, I don't want to shit talk people, but you've got GDC talks by people who've made like 30 games and 10 of those games have been successful. And it's like, why would you choose the person who's made one successful game over that? And I think there is a certain amount of it's like, well, that person is more like me. You know, that person is someone I can relate to. And I don't know. I just don't think that's how you should pick your teachers, right? Yeah, I didn't know that the one of the Amnesia people was making YouTube stuff. That's interesting. I think those are really interesting games. I played a chunk of Rebirth recently, and that had some really great puzzle design in. And I think that the thing that was really cool about the puzzle design in Amnesia Rebirth, I'm going to try and find a picture of it actually, because one of the things that I really liked, so in Amnesia Rebirth, you are in North Africa. I can't remember if you're in Morocco or Algeria, and there's a fort that's like a kind of French Foreign Legion fort, I guess. And there's some really, really good puzzle design in here where the sort of puzzle is integrated with the world building, is integrated with the horror. It's like the example is there is like a big trap that is like a ballista, like a big crossbow thing that has been built in the environment. And then you find out that you need to dismantle it to put this like winch back into the lift, to use the lift to go upstairs. And then you sort of find out that the reason why, you know, there's this ghoul running around, spoiler alert, but this is in the first like hour of the game. There's this ghoul running around, and you find out that the legionnaires who are stationed there built all these traps to try and fight the ghoul that was menacing them. And that's why when you go in there, it's full of all these horrible traps, right? So you've got that sort of like a really neat story behind why the traps are there. And now the traps are a threat to you, but they were put there to sort of protect the legionnaires against the monster, which is also a threat to you. So there's just a really nice knot of puzzle and environment and backstory design going on there at the same time that I just found really, really good. I played the first Amnesia, didn't get into it, but there was something about the setting of this and it being in a sort of different type of location that I kind of really liked. Didn't finish it, but I very rarely finish horror games because I get too frightened. Right, I am going to shut everything down now. Thank you so much for joining. And if you were one of the devs, I hope you got some helpful feedback. I am super grateful to everyone who gave feedback. And, you know, to be totally honest, when I started this channel, I thought, I'm the wizard. I know everything. And I'm going to tell people all this cool stuff I know. And one of the things that I didn't suspect was just how helpful the community would be to each other. And I really love that, you know, I can kind of play the game, waffle about game design, and then I check the chat and someone else has just dropped loads of like interesting like advice and feedback for the developers as well. So I hope the developers who were in the stream, I hope you sort of caught all the feedback that you got on the suggestions while we were all sort of workshopping your games. I think there was some good stuff in there, and yeah, everything we played today was pretty cool already, and just a couple of tweaks to kind of keep going in the direction it's already going. I didn't see anything today where I was like, this is a bad idea, right? And you do sometimes get games that are a bad idea, and you just need to be like, hey, stop making that game. Yeah, I'm glad you found it useful, sandwiches. Right, I'm going to shut down now. Thank you all, and see you all soon. Have a good rest of the week, and a productive time whenever you're doing whatever you're doing, and a relaxing time when you're not doing those things.